So, welcome everyone. Friday, September 29th. If you're anything like me, you're like, how are we at the end of September? This is nuts. Um, I don't know either. So time just flies. Today we have Evan. He's going to share with us on AI and marketing. And yeah, Evan from User Evidence, we've all seen him in the community and everywhere else. And go ahead, Evan, you can just jump right in.
All right. Hey, folks, good to see everyone. See lots of familiar names. Yeah, I thought, I could just help facilitate discussion around just some interesting ways that we're starting to see our customers and others, leverage AI in customer marketing. There's nuance to it. There's potentially risk in it, but there's lots of opportunity. And yeah, would love to hear from you all as well if you're doing cool stuff or have questions around different applications. I brought Ray, my co-founder, our head of product, who's working on some pretty crazy stuff. And then one of our customers, Cash, who you probably all know from Netskope, has also been doing some cool stuff on the AI front. But yeah, I thought I'd love to just hear from the group on what they're doing, and we can spur some ideas if that's helpful. But that was my plan. That sound good?
It sounds good.
Sweet. Well, let me just start. I think thinking about a couple areas, because how you apply AI in customer marketing, I think, is very specific to the use case. The kind of interesting thing, like generative AI is almost the antithesis to like customer voice, right? If you think about customer voice, it's the purest, authentic form of what a customer thinks about a vendor. And then on the opposite front, you have generative AI, which is essentially making stuff up at scale. And so how do those two things marry together and rationalize? It's a bit of a puzzle to put together, but there's a few different areas where we think about it. So one is, which is actually really interesting, is deriving insights from large data sets of customer feedback. So particularly like if you're a software company and you have tens of thousands of users and you're capturing feedback from users, those users, how do we start to kind of, bucket all that feedback into more interesting thematic, actionable insights? And there's been a lot of cool developments on that front. Other areas are more like distribution of customer content has been very interesting. So if you think about, a common use case, like you get a Slack from a random sales dude like me that's like, hey, do we have any examples in healthcare where we beat, competitor X in the Benelux region or something like that? And you're like, yeah, let me go find that. And so that using AI to kind of act as a concierge to serve up relevant content to salespeople at the right time is a really interesting area. And then there's a few more as well. But yeah, I'd be curious, just so we can kind of know where to focus, if there are particular areas that people on the call have been thinking about or, interested in how AI might apply, and then we can talk through those. But
Just one moment here.
feel free to chat, and then I get the 18-person dynamic is tricky sometimes.
We're seeing a couple of different ways that, well, three distinct ways that AI is falling into customer education. The first is personalization and being able to build out content paths that are specific based on personas and recommendation engines and all that kind of stuff. Think about like something like the Netflix consumer experience.
It's interesting.
And the second piece is content building, right? Building courses, building outlines. And that's where I see that overlap into CM stuff, is just the ability that we have to create content more quickly than for me to do it myself, to be honest. I hate, actually, it takes me weeks to build like 3 paragraphs because I think about it so much before I actually write it. So when I write it, it actually goes quickly, but I've been thinking about it for 3 weeks before I put it down, in written form. So, but that's where I see the big overlap is just in content creation. And then of course, analytics, being able to just get at the data that you have.
Out
It's
of
kind of that
curiosity,
third one. There's a little bit more nuance to it, but
have you been like accessing the power of AI and large language models? Like, are you going directly to, OpenAI or ChatGPT, or do you consume it through kind of middleware, more software applications?
it varies. I've been using ChatGPT for a lot. We don't have access to Bard here at our company. I use it on my home content, but in-house they've locked it down.
Yeah.
And then I use the Bing Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, quite a bit since they released that a couple of weeks ago. So those are the 3 that I'm using that are just kind of generic. I am currently investigating what's going on with Jasper.
Okay, cool.
Because they've got so many pieces in their stack now that are AI driven. And I've been playing a little bit with copy.ai. So
Interesting.
I like the idea of using AI to summarize and, yeah, basically summarize some content, bring some ideas together, that sort of thing. Like it helps with content, obviously, content creation and education, like Christine's talking about, but summarizing calls or different events and just a load of content at once is helpful. Oh,
Yeah.
like Lauren just said, summarization.
Has anyone, so like one of the things that's kind of we struggle with, or just on how we want to approach it, is using it for kind of augmenting the voice of the customer. So like if you think about it on an individual level, like with a case study, for instance, it gets a little tricky there because you're essentially making stuff up on behalf of the customer, which is kind of weird. Where we have found it useful is being able to kind of summarize the collective voice of the customers. So like, for example, like let's say you have feedback from 1,000 customers and you want to zoom into a particular industry like healthcare, and that's where it's like AI is good at kind of linking together the thematic kind of commonalities amongst different customer voices. So if you think about, authentic customer voice as kind of the bricks, and then AI kind of weaving together the masonry around those bricks, I think that can be kind of interesting. But has anyone like on like, because I've seen some examples of like AI generated case studies. I'd be curious how people think about like just the give and take there on how liberal we can be when we're augmenting what the customer is saying, if that makes sense.
I think with that, it depends on a couple of things. The prompts that you're using and how open the customer is to those suggestions. It's always wonderful when you're looking through a raw transcript and you just get that perfect soundbite, but realistically, that is very, very seldom going to happen. So you need to summarize essentially what was that person trying to say, and then rewriting it into something that sounds like a good soundbite, and then having them say, "Can we use this as your quote?" And assuming that it reflects really well on them and it makes them sound really, well educated and expert in their field, there's no reason why they wouldn't. You just want to make sure that it's not so far off from what the original statement was that you're just making stuff up. But I've had a really great time with taking some of that raw transcript footage and then using prompts about, okay, we're telling this in the form of a story, and this person is the hero of the story, and I want you to do it in this type of a format where it was problem, solution, outcome, pull quote. and then it'll give me those quotes that, of course, some of them are actually weaving in what the person actually said. Some of them are just completely hallucinations from ChatGPT, and you have to read it carefully to tell the difference between the two. But if something sounds good and it really honors the intent and what what you were really trying to get out and what that customer was trying to say, I think it can be immensely helpful.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That's a good way to put that, like that.
I
Cash,
agree
I'd be
with that.
curious to hear from you. You
Yeah.
you have decent sized piles of data and feedback and what you're thinking about doing with it.
Well, and I agree with Lauren's take. Like, actually, like, I think on an individual basis, like, my initial response to like AI being used is like, yeah, like that's exactly what we're trying to not be. But I don't know how Ray did it, but the one day I was asking, because there's a lot of like busy work that goes into moderating stuff, right? And coming up with like individual story summaries and different parts of like the case study or different things that have to be delivered, that just becomes busy work for someone like me, like moderating or tagging or adding quotes. And Ray, you can tell me what you did. I don't know what you did, but the one day we were on a call and I was like, hey, it would be really cool. Like, I was starting to think, I was thinking more on like the Gartner side, right? Like why do we pay Gartner hundreds of thousands of dollars to give us back like what our customer sentiment is? If we have all these things, we should generate the reports. But Ray applied it actually like on the individual basis. And when we were looking at a piece of content, like I saw it spin for a second and then it spit me out the synopsis or the summary. I can't remember what section it was, Ray, or like the intro on our case studies on user evidence. And that for me was super valuable because it wasn't replacing the customer's voice, it was augmenting it, right? Like it was giving it more in a summary. And to deliver like the customer content and to strengthen it was a super valid kind of application for the tech. Ray, what did you actually do? I don't know, like you coded it in and it spun blue for a few seconds.
Yeah, I think we're just using generative models to summarize. The way our tool works is it captures direct feedback from the customer's mouth. So we want to be very careful about not changing what the customers say, but when they answer 10 questions, they're not designed to go together in sentences. So we've just applied some unique generative models to like summarize what they say or combine those statements into a compelling narrative. If they mention all the challenges they've incurred before using Netskope and how they're applying it and what products they're using and how they're using it and some of the results they've seen, you can, it can be smart enough, and we've trained it to, focus around creating content like that specifically. So, instead of you going through and trying to put those things together, we've trained, some custom stuff to do that for you. But, I think that's one thing it's really good at, is just taking, as long as you tell it not to make new stuff up. That was one of the harder parts of getting it built, like, because it could take that narrative and add something that would really not be a good customer experience by saying we saw 400% ROI with Netskope, when really they were saying we save 40 minutes a week or something like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and I haven't seen it make any stretches, right? It's actually just like, so far I think our application of it has been like time savings for me. And being able to, like, people probably think I come up with all of it, right? But it's actually more true to remove my bias. I think it's more true to remove me from the conversation and let the machine just regurgitate what the customers have said. And that actually brought up like the next craziness with my ask for Ray, is when I was looking at it. And I mean, this goes far beyond like the Gartner stuff, which I'm still super interested in getting bigger reports and more conducive or more like comprehensive analysis of our feedback. But where all of this went when we started seeing AI work on this is now my obsession is having a Netskope customer bot. So what this would be is we're working with user evidence to figure out like our content for the bot would only be things customers have said. And then instead of a customer talking to, or a prospect talking to one customer about what is working with Netskope look like, they would talk to this bot that is sourced from thousands of customers and their sentiments and find out what is working with Netskope, what does the implementation look like, and then the feedback and like the model, it works because it would be certified by user evidence as not being something that we're feeding, but that is only our customer sentiment. That to me is my current like obsession with the AI stuff, because to me, is way better than a bot, or way better than like a one-to-one call, because you're not getting like handheld and just delivered one person. You're getting across 1,000 use cases. And I hate, like, I'm super impatient, so I don't want to wait for the call. Like, I just want to chat and do it. And that's probably, like, to me, the most exciting application of this kind of attack right now that we're looking at.
That's crazy. Are you talking about like in like a drift or an intercom context, like when someone goes to your website, like, hey, ask a customer a question type of thing?
Yeah, I'm thinking of, we take it like it would move from me, like my initial thing, Evan, is just selfishly, right? Is I just am sick and tired of matching references, right? So I'm like, I just tell them, just go talk to the stupid bot. But I think it would become that, where it would go on a primary place on our website, and it would become a differentiator for us. That's like, hey, you want to know what these security applications look like? Ask our customers.
That is, I mean, kind of, when you think about it, like the trust gap, right, is like, usually you're like, talk to sales, and you know, that sucks, right? Talk to customers is like a cool alternative in that, you know, juncture, which is super interesting. I like that. Cool.
It's something, yeah, I've been working with Cash on this, and I'd love to hear other people's perspective, because like the way I think about evaluating tools, it's like I go to G2 and I search around G2 for like, which kind of vendor should I look for? And then if it's a technical tool, I then go to Gartner and I'll be like, what are Peer Insights saying? And what does the Magic Quadrant say this month? And then I go to their website and I then like search for a case study, and I'm like, that's not the right case study. It's a different size. And I'll go and find another one. And then I like take a sales call and I talk to someone and I tell them to send me more specific stuff around how people are using it and things like that. And I guess like the goal with Cash is kind of like to combine all of these places or information to one place, so someone can in real time say like, well, who should I be looking at? You know, one of our customers is Divvy and Bill.com, and they're in the kind of like beta of this, but like they have 50 competitors. So people can say like, who did people switch from before using Divvy, like super early in the sales cycle, and they can start to evaluate those vendors. But it also has kind of some of their case study data. Instead of like someone reading one PDF, they can kind of treat exploring a product like they explore everything in life. They can Google it, right? It's like, if you want to know something, you Google and you get bunches of resources, and it kind of combines them all together so people can, you know, make the decision and find what they want. Whereas like one case study might answer one specific question about an integration, where another case study may offer a question around like customer support and just like general process. So I am curious if like people would even be interested in something like that, because though it uses the human components, it does like, it's a bot now, and it's less human at times. So just like, what it, like, is that too, you know, how to, I've seen G2 doing some of that recently too, with like their page, but it's actually not using the G2 reviews, it's using like sales collateral. So have you all seen people using it like that? And is that something that would be interesting?
I think that's a great idea, and could be really useful if you could find a good way to sort the quotes by topic, or find a way to get the bot involved in that, because it clears up the clutter so much more easily for a prospect to get immediately to what it is they're looking for.
Yeah, that's what a lot of our, you know, like our customers are saying, like my Slack channel is blown up with like, which customer do we have who's integrated here? And like, then, you know, someone sees it and they go, you know, check their spreadsheet and say like, oh, here's the thing. Whereas like that could have removed 3 points of contact and delivered a better customer experience if all that stuff was kind of coming from the same spot.
Yeah. And it's also tough when you have prospects who have a very specific thing in mind that they want to be reading about, or some kind of feedback. You know, like, if this didn't come from the left-handed purple widget industry with exactly 23 employees, then it's clearly not relevant to my use case.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, Lauren, I think like the other thing I get frequently, right, is we need this and this and this and this, and then you like go to move the ends of the earth to deliver that, and they're like, oh, we only needed this. And it's like, and that's where like I see like this bot like being able to get to that real quick, right? Like, what do they actually need? They're like, oh, actually the prospect just wanted a name drop. And you're like, we just like facilitated a call with our best customer and you want a name drop. Like at the end of this, we've already made the ask. Like, that's kind of like I think all of us probably have similar experiences, right? And it's all of this pain combined that it's like, well, if we could limit some of this thrash with a bot and deliver some of the value, that was kind of the thinking in my head around all of this. But I think it only works in a model where you have like somebody like user evidence or some other source that can verify it, right? The reason Gartner was able to get rid of sourcing references on MQs is because they had peer insights. Right, that they could say, okay, well, we still care. I don't know how much they actually calculated. I mean, don't quote this to anybody, but I don't know how much it actually sways the MQ with the peer insights, but they say it does. And so like that I think it can only work with that third party validation of like, this is real customer sentiment. It's not just crap we make up. But yeah.
I think this concept's kind of, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just asking, is this something that you are actively creating right now?
Yeah, Ray, do you want to show them the little Loom video of the kind of hack, the demo? It's kind of interesting, just to showcase kind of what it looks like in real life. But
Yeah, I did. Let me pull it up. I did.
I thought I was like the first man on the freaking moon, and I send a note to Ray, and then he's like this Cash, and I was like, yep.
So for some context real quick, like, yeah, Divvy is one of our customers. They probably captured like 4,000 survey responses through user evidence. They have this massive library of, great customer voice. And so that's the data source for what's about to happen here.
So there's a couple of things. It's just like, we're trying to figure out where people would want to use this, if they'd want it like on their website, or if they'd want to like just have it as a separate page people can send folks to. There's like lots of different applications we've seen, but like we're taking some like spreadsheet data and G2 data and user evidence data, but like it's consuming real quotes from people around like, what did you look at before using Divvy? Or how much time are you saving using the tool? And it's actually just spitting back direct quotes from the customers, but summarizing multiple quotes together, which is cool because like the customer marketing and product marketing team at Divvy, though they're huge, they could never comb through like these thousands of things. So they kind of like use us to find good sentimented things and then kind of create this database of positive stuff that then customers can interact with. And also, say this was connected and referenced from, different spots.
And each of these quotes are actual quotes, none of it's augmented yet?
Yeah, so these are directly from their customers, like via user evidence. So this is one thing we're working on just to make sure like we cite this back to where it actually lives so they can go see the real document, right? So like they might love this quote and say like, oh, where is this humanitarian experience company? And then go back to the case study or go back to the video that this was sourced from or something like that. So that, these things will instantly get distrusted, or I don't know, is that even a word? People won't trust them if there's not actual sources. And that's the problem with ChatGPT and a lot of spots too, right? It's like it's referencing all these things that aren't real sometimes. So we want to make sure we're really focusing on making sure like it's accurate and well cited, and there's not like room to make stuff up, which has technically been the fun part. But
are you able to store the questions that people are putting into the bot for your research as well?
Yeah, so you can like see, you can see like the interactions that people are asking for, which then can inform, oh, someone asked a question around like Divvy versus Brex, and we didn't actually have something about the integrations or something like that. So it's a good way to kind of like start to build for some of our customers with like millions and millions of users, like GitLab or something, like trying to build this heat map of where we don't have coverage is really tough. So that's kind of like where that data becomes particularly useful. It's like, the customer marketing team at GitLab could be absolutely massive, but like they'll never be able to, they're focused on the Goldman Sachs of the world. They're not really focused on the small development shop in Raleigh, North Carolina, but they also, make a ton of money from those folks. So they want to make sure they can showcase that piece of the customer as well.
So is this it's kind of like a chatbot, right? Like that you're creating based on their content, their positive content, and then shaping that chatbot to work in certain ways, like not augment the quotes and things like that.
Yeah.
And make sure, like, I'm sure there's got to be something with the responses when you don't have an answer, like being able to incorporate
Yeah.
something with that to say, we don't have a direct quote on this, not saying it like that, but this would be the best way to find somebody or get that
Yeah.
information that you need. Yeah, I play with a
Yeah.
lot of these chatbots trying to do things, and I know that they're evolving too. Like I saw somebody post about prompt engineering, like don't build your career on it. Not you, like just the average person, because it's going to change so much as these language models continue to improve. I think we've seen that just this year, but I think it's great, like the idea to be able to get in there and pull out those quotes. So it'd be cool to see what else this turns into and how the companies are using it, their customers are using it, and where it's fulfilling some things, but leaving some gaps for improvement, just to see what else is you're capable of creating.
Yeah. One of the things I'm more excited about, like, because we're only one set of data, right? User evidence survey data, but there's so much other good stuff out there outside of us. And the value of what you just saw, which is basically, how do we search and find the most relevant piece of customer voice information? It gets a lot more valuable if that pool of feedback gets bigger. And so now what we're doing is like, we're starting to ingest a lot more data from G2 or internal surveys or whatever, so that you start to maximize that pool, which makes it a lot more likely that when that question gets asked, hey, do we have this purple manufacturing squirrel, that you have something that matches. So it's building up this pool of customer feedback, in a way beyond just customer marketing too. Like imagine like you're a product manager and you're trying to figure out what's the most frustrating piece of the user experience for the healthcare segment, right? And being able to have democratize access to those insights so that customer voice is essentially a huge signal for that product manager is really interesting as well. So I think, yeah, it's not just us as the source, there's a variety of places customer voice lives. If you can bring it all together, it makes the search so much more powerful.
Yeah, and I think like that's a good point to make, because in community, when I like bring it community into kind of customer marketing world, there's so much collaboration with other teams internally that can make a huge impact. And I think that's the same here with voice of the customer. Is there's a lot of things that are posted on social media about companies that goes to die. There's a lot of people that respond about the support that they've gotten just talking to the tech team, and it goes and dies. Even with the product teams that are doing user studies, like I've helped a lot of product teams, obviously, working with different teams and stuff, but our companies get like set up that questioning, that getting all that feedback in those interviews and things like that. And after that, they don't usually give it back to customer marketing. But if there was a way to get that information to kind of not specifically automate when you have a new feature launching or something, but have some of that information in regards to those new features and things, that's super helpful too. So it really is all over the place. And I think it will put more emphasis on the voice of customer and making it more of a company-wide initiative instead of just, hey, customer
Yeah,
marketing,
totally.
come take care of this. When, I mean, you've got newsletters people respond to and all of these things, it's all over the place. And companies say, oh, well, we can't find it. We don't know where it is. And really, it lives out there. We just have to have a way to bring it all together, and not even just bring it all together, but make it super simple. The process has to be easy to just identify something as useful as a voice of customer so that someone can get it included in this type of um I don't I don't know if you want to call it a chat bot, but you want to call it something a little
Yeah.
more sophisticated and punchy. So um but to get it in there in that important database of information.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right on. I think the problem I've seen, it's like, yeah, the approaches to collecting feedback are very siloed, right? Product management has a very specific goal when they go out, which is, how do we get basically constructive feedback to keep the user experience good, which is a very different goal than customer marketers going out to get G2 reviews, for example. One area that we're not there yet, but I think we will get there soon for us. A lot of our data collections is via surveys, and surveys, for the last 15 years have essentially been a paper survey just online. And it's a very static experience. And if you think about it, like, the other thing a chatbot would be very good at is making that that survey more of a conversation, right? Like if a customer is not happy, we should send them down a very different survey path or conversational path around what can we do better, how do we improve the customer experience, that kind of thing. Versus if someone is happy, that path should be much more, do videos, leave reviews, like tell us about the value and ROI. Do you want to be a reference? And so, basically unlocking questions from this static kind of survey container into a more conversational delivery that's dynamic based on how that conversation is going, I think really improves the quality of that big data set of customer feedback, right? Because you're asking the right questions depending on how that conversation is going.
Yeah, and a lot of surveys, within user evidence, of course, a lot of the surveys are going to stay in that database. But, if I'm doing a survey asking, what are your favorite tools, or what have you used, or what are you glad you purchased, and things like that, there's a lot of room for AI to help out with turning that into more conversation. Um, and keeping track of that data, not just letting it kind of float away into Google Sheets somewhere and never turn into anything, which I know with user evidence, you have that database there, but getting those things elected into your broader database on user evidence would probably be helpful for getting more questions answered.
Yeah. Daniel, actually, I have a question for you. Like, you're at a decent sized company. Is there sensitivity or gates around just kind of normal employees accessing AI and LLMs in like a non-federated way? Or is there any has there been obstacles or guidance to like not use these things because of data privacy and stuff like that? Or
Yeah, it's a good question. We've had all of the above. There's the whole thing of like, we want to try to use this, and then the legal team did like, absolutely not, you can't use this. And then our engineering team is like, whoa, we're open source people here. We can we can do these things within limits, right? And
right.
there are some rules, right? No customer proprietary information. Like, this is why, Lauren, I was asking that question about how do you get around putting transcripts into something that gives enough breadcrumbs that could be, led back to things. But we are actually working internally. Not only our own team doing AI stuff, but we have a contract with a company that's built an LLM and a generative AI function for us to use internally, so it only learns on our information.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's right.
So, and it's not like a open AI contract. Like, I know there's the enterprise stuff for that. We also have access to that, but I'm still not sold on it. But the the chatbot, or as we call it, grotbot on our website is in fact like it's all generative AI, and that's actually what the reason I said plug into that side of things is because we didn't do anything for our team, but I can go to that site right now and say, what companies decreased? I actually just did it. What companies decreased MTTR with Grafana Labs? And it'll tell me. What companies have saved money with Grafana Cloud? And it'll read every document on our website and pull up a few case studies for me. So we can do that. And again, I didn't spend any time developing this. It just kind of came along with the overall generative AI on our site, please.
That's super cool. I'm starting to use it. We do have one that's like a proprietary internal one too. I'm starting to do that with with recordings of CSM calls.
That's cool.
To see where we might be able to find good quotes that we can then go back and ask, hey, you mentioned in your conversation with your CSM that, Alice is the best platform you've ever worked with. Like, we love that. Can we use it? And it's a really good way to help mine some of that material that's already there that might not have been more easily identified in other ways.
Yes, we do that too, Lauren. We actually have it set up through, it's a Gong connector that I think utilizes the Gong API to basically search on certain words in the transcripts. So we have that every time somebody mentions the word case study, reference, story, I think, or customer advocacy. I don't remember all of the words, but that information, the transcript gets shunted from Gong into Slack, into a channel that my team looks at every day. So we can just pull things from there. And so it's super easy from what I understand. Don't ask me how to set it up, but I can put you in touch with the person who did set it up, and he set it up in like 20 minutes for us.
I've gotten some really good hits with I love as a search.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a good indicator generally that you have a happy customer. That's cool. Yeah, and Daniel, what you're talking about with the how you consume AI at a larger enterprise, that was my hunch, is like, and that's why I asked earlier, do people just go directly to this stuff, when it's sensitive customer data, consuming it through more enterprise applications that have gone through security reviews and stuff like that and have, demonstrated silos and data protection and all that stuff seems like an easier way to access it in an enterprise, but it'll be interesting to see.
Evan, I think having the content for us, I got put in remote browser isolation yesterday for looking up an AI tool. So for a security company, it's not easy. But I think for us, having the content that we're looking to do a lot of this stuff with already be with you guys has been a huge advantage, right? And that's why our security teams are willing to look into it, because it's either the stuff has been anonymized or it's already stuff that's public. It gives us a little bit more control. Where we're on the other side of things, I've been looking at building a salesman bot to write up our salesmen so we get more data.
Yeah, that's cool.
On that. I think they're absolutely terrified of me running with that one. So that one will have a lot of controls and a lot of security reviews, where I think this one, actually they're a lot more amenable to look into it and approve it, because the content lives with you guys and it's stuff we've already moderated and published, and
yeah,
it
it's just
control.
Sophisticated, elegant regurgitation, right? Versus crazy stuff. Yeah, makes sense. Other topics y'all want to hit on, or anyone else have any other crazy ideas on how to use AI in customer marketing?
It's a little bit related, and we talked about this back at the CMA Summit in in Oakland. Another way that it's sort of customer experience and customer marketing come together is if you can figure out how to plug in translations into AI. It goes a long way, because I don't know how many of us here have either the budget or the teams to translate our case studies, but that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of people that don't work for us to coordinate what is what in a different language. However, there is some grace that comes along with if it is a computer generated translation that people are okay with. So one of the things we did was we plugged in our case studies into the same thing that our blog works on, which is if anybody is in a country that is not an English speaking country, they actually get a prompt from our website based off of their IP address that says, hey, would you like to view this content in this language? If they hit yes, it basically turns into the same sort of thing that Google Translate does. It's not Google Translate, but the same thing. Like if it notices that you are in a country that doesn't speak that language, it will translate it for you. And that becomes a much better experience for our customers and our prospects in those areas, and allows us as customer marketers not to have to be like, we should translate this thing, we should translate that thing. Let the customers who are searching for it be the ones that determine what you translate.
Interesting. What is that out of curiosity? We're working on kind of localization for more of our enterprise tier, but
So we work with the same company that built the chatbot. So I think it's the company's called PAL, PAL. And so it's just that same sort of technology. I don't know what the translation engine is behind it. It might end up being Google Translate, but the idea is it's learning based off where you are to suggest that, do it. And then like for the most part, if it's a computer that's translating it, people are okay if there's some random words that don't make sense. They're generally not okay if you click over to a French website and it's not 100% correct.
Right. Yeah. Better than nothing. Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
I think go ahead, Lauren.
Thanks. For the global folks, do you have to have a completely separate process for when you're dealing with European customers or targets because of the GDPR issues?
Are you talking about in terms of loading things into generative AI, or are you just talking about, say a customer from Germany logs in and gets suggested, hey, read this page in German?
More of the first. That do you need to have a separate level of security and complexity when just because it is so strict when dealing with a case study or some other kind of material that is referencing a European customer?
I would venture to say that it is a set of laws and interpretations that is yet unwritten, or is yet written. Not written. I don't know. It's Friday. My brain is not functioning. But the idea is it's one of those things that is not yet interpreted, I would say.
So,
But
does your workflow change, or is your behavior different for when you're dealing with European stuff, or is it more just like, well, it's unwritten, so until someone tells me I can't, I'm gonna go and do this?
in our experience, like, I used to work with SurveyMonkey too, so we had a decent amount of like this, how we handle GDPR and stuff like that. As long as like our LLM is within the corporate silo, so nothing's going out. Like we of course use inputs to train in, but it's the same data that we already have, that we have rules around what we can do with it. And if we get a DSR request from someone in Ireland, we can service that, of course, as the data processor. Our customer is still the controller of that. But as long as we're just doing fancy stuff with the same data, but it's not going out to any additional place, then it's still within the same set of controls. But I think that's the important thing, is like you just got whatever you're using. Like we don't access OpenAI and stuff directly. Like we have an enterprise middle layer that's a lot more, we can configure a lot more securely. So as long as you're not sending stuff out there, then you're just doing additional stuff with the same data. I think it's okay, but it is tricky. You got to know what you're using in that sense.
Cool, thank you.
I had a thought, but I don't remember what it was. That was a good question, Lauren. For me, I think it's part of like how you go to the sites and it's like GDRP notice, blah, blah, blah. Look at all these cookies and things of information. Approve some of them, approve all of them. And I'm just like, what's the thing that I click to make it go away? Because I'm one of those people that I'm just like, screw security. I just want to get where I need to go. But that's me. Companies can't do that. So I think that there'd be some adjustments they would be making to if they wanted to take any of that information and do anything with it, because holy cow, some of those, like the fees that companies are getting charged with for not following GDRP are so big. So it's got to be something to consider and take a look at. Um, but like even what Evan's saying with coming where you're already in like that corporate aspect, you're part of everything. Um, they have to get approval for those for some of that stuff anyhow. So
Yeah.
and yes, Daniel, I'm with you. It's Friday afternoon. It's not Friday afternoon there, but it's Friday afternoon here, and it's almost noon your time. So I don't think you have to have it all straight at this point. Just say what you say and see what happens.
Yeah, I think in that interest, we'll let people go in a sec. I think my closing thought on this would be like, if you think about how this impacts the customer marketing function, like a lot of the stuff we're looking to automate, it's not taking anyone's jobs or anything like that. Like it's kind of down level, not super sexy, but important work. For instance, generating 170 case studies, the same thing over and over again is like, it's important because you need the breadth and diversity, but like, yeah, a person doesn't necessarily need to spend all day doing that. And it's not the best use of like what people are really good at, which is the creative synthesis and thinking around how all these programs work together. So I think I'm hopeful what I will see is like, we'll see this, we'll see customer marketers like be freed up around less like tactical, just grind it through, create stuff, tasks like Cash is referring to, which will free them up to work on more strategic programs and customer advisory boards and orchestrating technology stacks and stuff like that. And I think if people do that well, like that's one thing that helps this function get to a more senior seat at the revenue table. If you're the orchestrator of how customer voice and insights is accessed across an entire company, like that's an important role versus just like you're the dude that like when someone asks, hey, can we get a case study? Like, yeah, here's a case study. So I think that's what I'm hopeful that we'll see is this gets a lot of this tactical stuff off our plate and puts us into more strategic orchestration mode, which gets us a lot closer to the head of the table.
I would like to see more of like the analytics and trends that as we create more and more of these case studies, even with AI, we're able to see what part of the case studies or are more impactful. I asked Emily Amos earlier this week if she had a question in her survey. She does that once a year that was the most impactful. And she said that it's the title, three metrics, and the customer quote at the top of a case study
Makes
that
sense.
seem to be the most impactful. So taking these and making it, generating them quickly and getting them out there easy to find for the use cases that they match. And yeah, I think because user evidence already turns things into graphics pretty quickly, from my understanding.
That is a whole can't like that area is getting so we've been basically talking about text, right? If you think about it, but part of presenting this content and customer voice in a digestible way is all the design automation around it. And like you think about how much work goes into like taking a case study but making it fit in a square so you can throw it on Instagram or something like that. Like that whole last mile of design and creative automation is I think where a lot of the advancement will come in the next 12 months. We're starting to play around with this some now, and it's pretty crazy. We can basically just like look at your website, look at your old case studies, and just kind of infer your design themes and kind of brand guidelines and stuff like that, and then recreate novel content from that and repurpose it on the fly for different channels and kind of atomize it and chunk it up. So I think the creative piece will be, I think you'll see a lot of advancement where today we've just been really focusing on generative text.
Yeah, but I think the generative text is good as well. Like it's good to have that because it's going to be able to give people that immediate response of what they're looking for and helping them find that, where chatbots or these tools in the past haven't been able to get specific enough.
Yeah.
And even we as people, as companies, can struggle to be specific enough. So I think it'll be helpful. I think like over the years, I haven't wanted to use these discussion chats because they never really seemed that helpful. I always felt like my question was the one that it didn't answer, where now it feels like I can put in a question and actually get something back that isn't just like, oh, you asked a question about this tax on your billing. Here's a question or here's an answer from billing. We add taxes to your bill. Like it's got to be more than that. It's got to start to answer my question. And I actually see that now. And I hear that it's just going to keep getting better and better more quickly. So I'm excited to see things like this shared with us and what that can look like for our customers, but all the different ways that we can play with these new technologies and make our jobs a little easier.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, everybody. This
Yeah, well, I wanted to get it just as a product person, kind of trying to think about how these kinds of tools can help customer marketers. Just PSA, if you have any crazy ideas or things you're seeking, just feel free to ping me in Slack. Cash pings me all the time with ideas, and then we try to make them happen. But would love to hear from anyone who wants to see these types of tools and certain kinds of use cases they're trying to achieve, and we can go try to do that.
Yeah, thanks. And this is probably our third or fourth call where we've talked quite a bit about AI and how it's impacting voice of customer and our work. So those calls are always out there, usually like every other week. And yeah, so I'm sure we'll have more of these calls, and I'll try to remember to reach out to you guys so that you can join us. Thank you for hopping on and sharing with us what you're working on. Thank you, everyone who shared their ideas to contribute. Next week, we have Claudia Miller is coming to teach specifically women, but men can tune in too, how to write their resumes to rise up in tech. She has done amazing work with my resume, and this is the second time in the last few years that I've worked with her. I'm super excited to have her come on and teach other people that are looking for work. So I hope you'll come. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and message me in Slack or LinkedIn or email, and I will get back to you. And sorry about the recording link. I'm getting access to the calendar that invite that Leslie sent out so that I can make changes when necessary. Everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.